All right, joining us now on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, she is Sara Civian, Bleacher Report, 2 Minute Men podcast. We haven't talked to Civ in a while. Sara, it's good to see you. We actually can see you through the magic of StreamYard technology. It's great, isn't it?
Well, now I can.
On to bigger and better things, you guys. I love it. Nice to see you too.
As we're drinking I'm drinking the 10 wine.
Oh no.
Well, look, Sara.
So bad.
The Canes haven't won. The Canes haven't won an Eastern Conference Finals game in a long time. All right. So we have to, it hasn't happened since this bottle was made in 2007.
Good juju.
You know what? We're going to crack it open, and I'm giving myself a headache just drinking it right now, but it doesn't matter. I'm doing it for the team, Sara. Let's go.
You're dedicated to the cause, and we love you for that.
Speaking of the cause, you wrote about this. Was it the previous? No, it was ahead of this series. The Carolina Hurricanes seem to create this cause from traditional media that, this is terrible. The ratings. I don't believe these people. I don't believe them. I think you wrote about this. If you like hockey, why wouldn't you want to watch this matchup? Why wouldn't you be taking in Florida and Carolina? Because while the scoring hasn't been off the charts, the games have been tense. It's been a hell of a lot of fun to watch, even if the Canes are down 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, do you want the blowouts with New Jersey and Carolina again? No, I'll take this type of hockey any day, even if you got Kokoniemi reacting like he did, because these games are so close and so good to watch. I mean, I do think they cause this fuss, and then the fans get a little defensive, and it creates this weird environment where people don't really want to root for the team because they're like, oh my God, these fans are so defensive. But it's because they're defending something that a lot of people don't truly understand.
But aren't all fans defensive? All fans, like, all you got to do is go online and you will find extremely online people being terrible about their teams. It's not a new phenomenon for the Canes.
Yes and no. I mean, as somebody from Boston and who's been around Bruins fans, I think Boston people will be the first to make fun of themselves, but they're also very intense and in your face and mean, where Hurricanes fans are nice and they expect that niceness out of other people. And then when they don't get it, they're like, how is this not working? But I don't know. I take that niceness every time.
Sara Civian joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. And Sara, you know a lot about the Canes and what they've gone through in the last 5 years. I'm curious. I had an existential question for Joe before Game 3, and that is, are the Canes top players, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, let's throw Turbo in there too, are they good enough? Are their top players good enough for the Canes to win the Stanley Cup?
It's a yes and situation. Yes, I don't want to say no, they are not good enough. Like, yes, and they need one more sniper. They have always needed one more sniper. Pacioretty was going to be the guy. They didn't really have an excuse. I will say they didn't have an excuse to do nothing at the deadline, but at the same time, the teams that didn't really go far. But that's also in a vacuum because those teams didn't really need that sniper necessarily. And the Hurricanes have had this one clear need, and then 2.5, I'm going to say, of their best 3 or 4 players went down. And it's just kind of like, what do you expect from them? I think under those circumstances, it's great they even made it to the ECF and they're having these close games. And I also think it's just the way their team in front office works, that they're not going to take these big risks, but they are going to be in contention for a while and tweak little things and hope that it pays off. It's like that's a risk in itself, even as other GMs might go for something at the deadline and that doesn't work out. The risk the Hurricanes take is not doing that.
Do you know how mad I am that we were denied a Max Pacioretty final where Vegas gave away one of their players for nothing playing against him in the finals? Like, I am so mad that we're not getting that.
They would have got Vegas for once in their life, and it looks like that's not happening, and they're Vegasing everybody else, so that does stink.
Sara Civian, Bleacher Report, joining us here. That's Giglio, Ovies, and she's on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. So I agree with your yes, and it's a much more layered conversation because I don't like the retconning of the trade deadline. I was one that was adamant about going out there and utilizing their $10 million in cap space. And in retrospect, if the goal is to find yourself here more consistently than not, if your goal is to win the division and put yourself in the best possible chance to get to the Stanley Cup, I don't see how their moves didn't pay off. We're talking about not having these guys, but they did make moves to secure one for the long term in Andrei Svechnikov. And then they made their that's where they make their moves in the offseason, as you mentioned, with Max Pacioretty or Brent Burns, that has clearly paid off, but he's not available. Now, in a way, I do feel that Andrei Svechnikov and his injury tables the discussion as to whether or not he is capable of being that guy, right? We saw Nate just get these questions last year. He produced in the regular season, but he's been a little bit quiet this year. Sebastian Aho started off hot, but he's been a little bit quiet in the series. We still don't know what Andrei Svechnikov is capable of, and I got to imagine that the Canes truly believe he can be that guy, so they're not going to make any crazy moves because they feel like, well, if we just had him, then maybe that would be the difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of stinks in that way that we play what it feels like there's always that one thing. Like last year, it was Freddie not being available. This year, it's Svechnikov not being available. And they do have the depth to withstand. And they are at the Eastern Conference final. Like there are only 4 teams left.
Right.
So I will say then luck plays in for sure. And you're seeing luck on some of these bounces. You're seeing Bobrovsky. What are you going to do sometimes? There's so many things. I don't know. I've just seen so much discourse about this, and people are getting mad that people are talking about the trade deadline, or people are talking about the Stars aren't being good enough because you just look at Sergei Bobrovsky having this Conn Smythe caliber playoff run, and you ask yourself, is there anything they could do? But yeah, a team that wins the cup is going to have to face these good goalies and have the scoring talent to withstand that. And the Hurricanes just don't have that right now. I do think Svechnikov would obviously help that, especially when it's been 2 or 3 goals that could completely change the complexion of the series.
And sometimes I guess that's the maddening part about sports. You can't predict these things. And hockey, out of all the sports, is one of the most fickle, right? Because you go back to the start of the playoffs and the Florida Panthers versus the Boston Bruins. And I asked Joe this question earlier. Who started that series in net for the Florida Panthers?
Alex Lyon.
Right. I mean, not Bobrovsky. If Bobrovsky was this guy, you think Paul Maurice, if he knew that, was going to start Lyon? No. He wasn't great. But there was a belief in keeping with Bobrovsky, or at least that he's going to give us a better chance than Lyon. And obviously that's paid off with this all-time heater, which all this is to say is that just like the Carolina Hurricanes, scoring can come in bunches and you can go through a drought, a goalie can revert back to the mean pretty quick if you just keep peppering him with shots, right?
100%. And you've seen this in this playoff run with most teams that it's been kind of unique that they haven't had this elite, like the Panthers are the only team that have had this elite goaltending through this playoff run. So I think that might be, while it's true that the hot goaltender can take you far, as you're seeing with the Panthers, it's also true that there are other aspects now. So I will say I've never fully subscribed to you absolutely need an elite goaltender to win the playoffs. It doesn't hurt, but I think the Hurricanes do really well with that, and they've kind of gotten on that train early where they need just an above average goaltender and then this elite defense.
Sarah, you follow the NHL a lot closer than Joe and I do. We follow the Canes, right? But you actually have an understanding of the league. At the time when Florida trades Huberdeau for Tkachuk, what was the response around the league? I think we know what it is now, but at the time, how was that move interpreted?
I mean, it was, whoa, what the heck is everybody doing? Like there's finally a big trade going on in the NHL. I think there's a lot of expectations that were not met by Huberdeau. I think they were just happy to get something for Tkachuk if you're the Flames, but at the same time, that did not work out for them. And when you are the Panthers, a lot of more like GMs just need to keep it simple, right? Trade for one of the best players in the league, and he's going to put up 100+ points and give you this fantastic playoff run. I think going for something like this, you've got to give Bill Zito some credit.
Sara Civian joining us here on the Heister Automotive Group Hotline. Carolina Hurricanes trying to stave off elimination tonight against the Florida Panthers. I think they're going to be able to pull that off. Oh, I want to close on this, Sarah. I want to go back to how we started this conversation, what you wrote about in terms of the Canes, this market, and because you came into this area cold, right? Like, what did you know? What did you know about the Canes before you joined the Athletic and you were assigned to cover the Canes?
Honestly, not that much. I hadn't even been to Raleigh. My brother used to work for the Wolfpack for like a few months, and I almost visited him, decided not to. And then they were like, "Do you want to come cover this new and exciting team?" I think Tom Dundon called me and he's like, Rod Brindamore is the guy.
Mhm.
Trust me. And I'm like, okay, I liked watching him growing up. Maybe he'll bring something back here. The way he was so confident and the way, I mean, a former NHL GM who doesn't work in the league anymore that I know from a family friend called me and was like, just wait till this team makes the playoffs. It's the loudest house in the league. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I didn't
Cool.
expect them to do
Yeah.
it that quickly. And just the way you could tell, even though I came in cold and all of these changes had already happened, you could tell just being around it felt new and it felt like something exciting was on the verge. And Rod and Justin Williams kept talking about this idea of relevancy. I was like, they just seem to really get it. And look where we are now.
So what was the biggest takeaway when you were here then and when you left?
I think the misunderstanding around the league of kind of who these fans and who these people in this system are, because something that makes it so special is how much everybody has to care to keep things running. So these fans, maybe it's not as many fans in volume as a place like Boston or Montreal, but the fans that have been here since the drought are some of the most diehard fans you'll ever see in your life. And there's passion here and like a fun playfulness that kind of gives you hope about what sports should be.
So there was a tweet from John Chase, who used to work for the Carolina Hurricanes, when all this stuff was going on. John's good people, and I'm not necessarily trying to pick on him. I'm just saying I'm using this tweet as a springboard to my point, because there's this conversation about traditional markets. You know, obviously Boston would be considered a traditional hockey market, right? For whatever that's worth. But you know, now that you cover the league in its entirety, how many of those quote unquote traditional markets actually exist? I mean, is Dallas a traditional market? Is Las Vegas a traditional market? It just, what exactly does that mean? Not everything's one of the original six. There's more of them than there are of that. And I find it kind of weird that we're obsessed with this idea of, well, the Canes have been around for 25 years. You've got a generation and a half or two that has come up being a fan of this, and there's a cup and everything else. So why can't it be considered traditional? My point would be, why do you want it to be traditional? It's not fun.
It's such a funny juxtaposition of this sport that you don't really see in other sports to this degree with the gatekeeping. And I think it's a lot about hockey culture and the white old men's club where it's like they don't want the league to grow. They say grow the game, and then they just are like, no, I want my little 6 teams. I want people who actually get hockey, whatever that means. It's just something so insane to see, and you see it with that Andrew Raycroft tweet, who was the goalie of the Bruins and now works at Nesson covering the Bruins. He just said something about the ratings are going to be horrible, and the ratings are not horrible. They're some of the best ratings we've ever seen for the playoffs. So it's just like, first of all, and then they're talking about escrow and things and the cap salary raising. It's embarrassing if the cap salary raising by like $1 million is hinging on if the Bruins and the Maple Leafs make the cup final or whatever every single year. It's like, what? It's just not even true. Like some of the returns of like a ticket that, let's say a Toronto Maple Leafs ticket's going to be $800 and a Panthers one's going to be $400. You're still going to get more fans and who are going to buy more merch. Like there's new returning fans. There's like new capacity for fans of the Panthers. So they're going to be returning and over time spending more money, and there's just going to be more people who are fans that make the league more popular. I don't know why this is so hard.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so hard to contemplate either. I mean, more 18,000 people a night at PNC Arena is way more important for the health of the league than a half a share of ratings point on the national broadcast. In terms of ratings, you made an excellent point. The ratings are pretty good. Last time I checked the stadium series, but everybody was like, it's a college football stadium. This looks really, really, it doesn't look like the other stadium. Who cares about Raleigh? It was one of the highest rated stadium series games out there. So clearly there's a market for this stuff. And you mentioned the gatekeeping, and I can't think of somebody who would know more about gatekeeping than you, given that you're a woman covering hockey. And I would imagine that there are a lot of people who would point out to you, what are you talking about? So you wouldn't know anything about gatekeeping, right?
No, I wouldn't know the first thing. Not me hopping around the league.
Not that you experienced any gatekeeping when you came here, Sarah. Who is there? Why is she tweeting like this? What is going on here? Why do fans like her? Gee, I wonder why, guys.
I get literally physically gate kept out of the arenas. They're like, who do you know here? I'm like, I work in this league. They're like, can you call the PR? I'm like calling Sonny, like, hello, I'm once again locked out of the LA Kings arena. Physically, mentally, spiritually,
Yes.
gate kept.
Sarah, we appreciate it. Good catching up with you, and we'll talk to you later.
Of course. Thanks so much.